Home for A's baseball. But joining me now on the show to talk a little baseball, you can find his work at The Athletic and some of the best work in the game. It's always a pleasure to talk with Sarris. How are you this afternoon, my man?
Just had my final run before the half marathon on Sunday in San Francisco. So
a half marathon?
Getting ready to...
I just moved to California, and I'm not used to the heat, but it doesn't get as hot and I couldn't imagine running. Well, I can't imagine running a mile anywhere, let's be real. But a half marathon in this heat, I would just imagine that human beings are unfit to do that from what I've experienced since moving here.
No, actually, San Francisco's supposed to be the easiest because of the temperature, and then I'm doing the second half, which is supposedly mostly downhill. So I am making it easy on myself.
Okay. Well, best of luck in your endeavors. Your latest piece, along with another one of my favorite baseball writers, Jason Stark, up there at The Athletic, talking about how the three true outcomes are down for the first time in 17 years, and you and Jason trying to explain, along with the help of some executives and scouts, coaches, players, why that is. And just a real quick rundown, home runs are down from 1.22 to 1.08. Strikeouts are down from 8.68 to 8.36. Walks are down from 3.25 to 3.11. And I think for most people, they would look at that or hear me say that and go, well, how much of a difference is that really? Like, it seems real incremental when you look at the numbers. How much of an impact are we really talking about here?
Well, you're right. It isn't a huge step. It isn't really a huge difference from last year. That's true. However, it's the first time in 17 years that all three of the numbers have gone down, and it's the first time in 30. It's the second time in 30 years that they've gone down. So it's basically just been a steady march towards more homers, more strikeouts, more walks, and this is the first time that we've had really a big step in the other direction.
And I thought it was funny in your article, and you and Jason asking people around the league of why this is happening, and you got some answers. You get some answers, or theories at least, from a few people, but you also get a lot of, I don't know, I can't explain it. I don't, even people in baseball don't even really totally comprehend what's going on here.
Yeah, well, I think the home run thing is the easiest to understand. They introduced a deadened ball last year, and then they kind of used it half and half. And this year they're using the deadened ball completely all season. So that was on purpose, done by baseball to deaden the homers and bring them down. So that was the easiest one.
What about before I move on from that, because I think there are too many strikeouts when you talk about baseball from an entertainment standpoint. Walks, probably too many of those when you talk about baseball from an entertainment standpoint. Those aren't action. Why do we want to bring down home runs? Chicks dig the long ball. The home run, now we know it was steroid driven now, but the home run saved the game in the 90s, according to many historians and baseball fans. Why are we trying to bring home runs down?
I think it's actually because home runs and walks are tied to each other. And that's what we found in terms of why the walks are down. If you think about it this way, and we've proven this on the player level, if you're afraid of a guy, you nibble and you walk him. So there was a guy, Chris Davis for the Orioles. He used to hit a ton of homers. When he was frightened, when people were frightened of him, they walked him. But when they were no longer frightened of him, they no longer walked him. You can see his walk rate just go away in the latter half of his career. And so basically I think that they were going to try and bring the home runs back to where they used to be, sort of 10 years ago, and sort of bring the walk rate down with it. The problem for me is, I agree with you, strikeouts are the problem. There's too many strikeouts, and I think that's velocity. The only reason the strikeout rate has gone down this year is because they stopped pitchers from hitting, and they started enforcing the spider tack, the sticky stuff rule, and keeping them from those two things are the only things that have put strikeout rate down. So I think we need to do something about velocity or something like that.
Talk with Sarris of The Athletic and his article along with Jason Stark about the 3 true outcomes in baseball being down simultaneously for the first time in 17 years and trying to explain why. And like you said, and there's a chart in the article about it, of how much home runs and walks are tied. And if you look at those on this line chart, these 2 line charts of home runs and walks are almost identical. But the strange thing is, like, of all the anomalies in what we're looking at right now, is that walks and strikeouts are down. That usually is not the case when you talk about Major League Baseball and the swings that it takes and the way that it's played and hitters' approaches.
Yeah, and I think that's related to the DH and sticky stuff thing. But we have more work to do, man. I mean, this brought us back all the way to 2017 in terms of strikeout rate. I mean, that's not that long ago, and I think people would rather go back a little bit further. And I think there's a couple things that can do it. The pitch clock, you can force the pitcher to, right now pitchers are taking as long as they can between pitches. It's like taking as long as you can between reps when you're working out.
Mm-hmm.
They can max out easier if they take longer rests. And so if with a pitch clock, you force them to kind of pitch at a faster pace, and hopefully we'll see velo come down a little bit. And the other thing is limit how many pitchers are on a staff. Right now they have 13 pitchers on a staff. That lets you just kind of cycle through. Hey, max out. Okay, go. Next guy.
How much of this is because you can implement things, and baseball has and will continue to implement some things like what you're talking about, but I think in every sport we see trends, and then we see players individually and teams as a whole recognize those trends and do things to counter them and to try and to beat them. How much of this do you think is some of these changes that Major League Baseball has made with the ball and the rules and they'll continue to make? And how much of it is just teams and players adjusting and the game naturally evolving and changing the way that these guys play it?
There's a tiny bit of evidence that players are starting to go the other way a little bit into the shift. I remember last night in the Giants game, Brandon Bell took a bunt to where the shift wasn't to get on base in the 9th inning because they needed a base runner. And there's a little bit more of that happening every year. That's partially why, I think they're going to ban the shift. And I'm not that into it because I think that on some level you should allow players to adjust to the game. However, when we started looking at fastball velocity, when we started tracking it, in the early 2000s, it was 89 miles an hour was the league average velocity. This year, it's 94.
Good
and
Lord.
I just think, I don't know. I think that's, we're bigger, better, faster, stronger, and maybe we should think about some of the rules of the game to accommodate that.
Before I let you go, and your co-author for this piece, Jason Stark, he had another piece in The Athletic about a week ago, or maybe a little more, about the pie slice rule that they're toying with. I'm sure you saw it or of this rule, and I described it to the listening audience as imagine two lines parallel to the baselines coming off the back of second base, and both the shortstop and the second baseman are not allowed to be in that area, and it keeps them about 15, 20 feet away from the bag. What do you think of that version of getting rid of the shift?
Yeah, I actually helped Jason on that piece a little bit, and what happened was they made a rule in the minor leagues where they said you can only have 2 defenders on the left and 2 defenders on the right on the infield, and they said nobody can stand in the outfield, right? So they banned the shift, and guess what? Nothing happened.
Right.
No numbers changed. No, they were able to still defend the way they wanted to. And the reason is they put the second baseman basically almost in the outfield, just barely, not in the outfield.
Right.
And the shortstop on second base.
So they were basically right where they were before, but maybe moved by just a few inches. Yeah, I'm fascinated by it, man, and I'm fascinated by these trends that you guys talk about in this article. Again, it's Jason Stark and our guest Eno Sarris. Check it out. MLB's 3 true outcomes are all down for the first time in 17 years. why it's up there at The Athletic. Always a pleasure. I could do this with you all day, man. Thank you so much for the time.
All right. Thanks for having me.
There's Sarris, my guest. Check out his work at The Athletic. Like I said, one of my favorite baseball writers because he brings the analytical and the statistical, but combines it with the human and makes it meet in the middle and make sense to all of us. And so I love any time talking baseball with Sarris, and always love his work over there at The Athletic. We'll hit a quick break. On the other side,